Welcome back, everyone, to Between the Ropes TV. Before we get started, as always, please hit that like button. Make sure you're subscribed as well. We want more subscribers. Help us get to our first milestone, which is going to be the big 100 subs. So, yeah, please hit that subscribe button. And, we're going to jump straight into this. Obviously, it's a big card. There's a lot of big fights. There's going to be some talk of revenge, I'm sure. Righting wrongs and so on. But we're going to start with an unconfirmed, a confirmed fight, but I should say an unconfirmed opponent. Obviously, Jack Bateson returning to the ring. Josh, what are you expecting from this? Are you expecting probably like an easy win with no opponent confirmed yet?
Yeah, I think it'll just be a fight to build him up. You look at Jack Bateson's record. It's not too bad in fairness. 13-0, 3 knockouts. He's not the biggest of punchers. Obviously, he fights at super bantamweight for those that don't know. And a lot of his fights have been on small hall shows against people with largely negative records. So I expect this will be, he's a Leeds lad. I think this will be the start of building him with Matchroom and DAZN. And with him being at super bantamweight, if we may get the Hopey Price fight, Battle of Yorkshire, that could be something to look out for that they might be building towards. But it's a nice fight to get us going. I think it'll be good. It'll be brilliant for him, isn't it, in front of his home crowd?
That's it. And as you say, I think it might be about building up his fan base there as well. Obviously, it's going to be a local crowd. So, yeah, as you say, you probably expect an easy win, maybe an easy opponent, but just to build up his repertoire, really, in that area. Ben, moving on to the first female fight of the card, Ebony Bridges back in action. I mean, originally she, when she come onto the scene, she made a lot of noise, and then ultimately got defeated. But she came back, didn't she? Obviously in the fight camp, picked up a win, and she's back in action again. Do you reckon this is set up for her to win this one as well?
Yeah, she's 100% going to win this in my opinion. I think week 2 of fight camp, she came in, she did the job which I think everyone expected. She looked good, but I think with the level of opponent, you expected her to look good with what she did. And like I've touched on many times before, the gap, and like she went from challenging for a world title to then dropping down to just journey women really.
And she made we spoke about that, didn't we? That there's not really enough of that middle ground in the female, certainly the female boxers at the moment. So,
well, I just think to me, Bridges, it says a lot when her first opponent on fight camp was Ellie Scotney's first opponent, and now she's fighting Ellie Scotney's second opponent. I just think, look at the level you're fighting at, and Ellie Scotney was meant to be on that card, the fight camp. So I just think we could be built after this fight. We could be building to maybe those two in the ring, which would be good.
See, I think we'll be building towards the Shannon Courtney rematch before the end of the year.
I don't think it'll happen. I think with Courtney, what's the point when she just demolished?
I know what you're saying, but I think there's too much media attention on Ebony Bridges, and I think with the lack of depth in the sort of female divisions as we spoke about, I think that's what we'll get. And then once Courtney beats her again, that's when I think you'd then start to get the Ellie Scotney fight in.
See, I think that Bridges really wants to fight because it's huge for her. You can tell with the level, but Shannon Courtney wants Rachel Ball. Because to me, Shannon Courtney won that fight against Rachel Ball, and it's the right way to go. And I don't think I think Ebony Bridges for Courtney is a step back, whereas Rachel Ball, right the wrong, like this card's all about.
Yeah, definitely. I get that, and as you said, there is a lot of that in this card, isn't there? Going to move on to the next fight. Obviously, Hopey Price coming up against her head. I'm just going to go for the last name, Hussein, because I went to pronounce that and just absolutely butchered it there. Both with pretty impressive records. Obviously, Hussein has just the one loss on his card. How do you see this one going, Josh?
I think it'll be an interesting fight. Zahid Hussein's got a largely padded record again. A lot of fighters with negative records, but he's very experienced. He's just got 2 knockouts on his record. So, he's not going to be a big puncher. We saw Hopey Price out 4 weeks ago, obviously on the fight camp shows. I fancy Hopey Price for it, to be honest. I just think he's such an exciting prospect that we're going to see him come in. He's going to put on a show. I think Dave Caldwell's doing an absolutely brilliant job with him, and I think this is a good step up at a good time. And again, he's fighting in front of his home crowd, so I really do fancy it to be a good performance from him, and we'll move on.
Yeah, I was just going to really quickly ask then on Josh. Quickly, Josh, you don't think that's a bit of a dangerous move? As you said, you think Hussein's record is quite padded, and that's perhaps why you don't see this as being like maybe a step up too soon for him.
No, I don't. I hope decorated amateur. So far, not put a foot wrong as a professional. And okay, he's not really been tested. Grande last time out showed a little bit of ambition. But I think at some point, there's only, he's not got the knockout, the man strength, as we've called it previously yet, just the one knockout in 5 wins. So at some point, you've got to stop boxing your way in 4 or 6 rounders. You've got to make that jump. And I think Hopey Price has got the talent. And I think, definitely. I think we'll see a statement from him. I don't necessarily think we'll get the knockout, but I think we could see an absolute boxing masterclass. And, as I said, he couldn't have a better trainer in Dave Caldwell. He's doing an absolutely brilliant job with him, as he tends to do with all of his fighters, to be fair to him. I'm excited for this one, actually.
I think also it's not just that. It's the fact that this is 10 rounds now. So this is the step up for him as well, with the energy. And I think he was never going to not fight on a Leeds card. I think that's just as simple as that. And his performance last time was brilliant. So I think it's really good to get him out again.
Well, let's move on to the next side. Obviously, Giovanni Straffon coming up against Maxi Hughes. It's one of them, isn't it? Straffon looks like he's got the much more clinical record in terms of knockouts. But both of them have pretty established records. Ben, how do you see this one going? Is it going to be the points win for Hughes, or do you reckon it could be a potential knockout win?
Well, Joe, watching that last Straffon fight against James Tennyson, I didn't expect it to go that way. I thought Tennyson would win that, and I'm not going to lie, I've heard Straffon's name about, but that was the first time I properly sat down and watched him. No, it was only 1 round, but he looks like he packed some power. I just thought I was watching him, and straight away, Tennyson, he was just rocked straight away. So I think it's going to be a really good fight. I think Maxi Hughes won 4 of his last 5, I think it is, and I think it's a good standard for them both to go in. They've both had quite a few fights, and quite similar when you look at the records. It's just Hughes doesn't get as many KOs. So I think it could be an exciting one.
Yeah, moving on to obviously one of the 3 big fights, of course, Conor Benn back in action against Adrian Granados. Do you know what? I've got to be honest. I've got to give a view right here. This is just another stepping stone for Conor Benn. I don't expect him to have any issues whatsoever, and I don't know if you lads agree. But the second I saw that fight, I just thought this is another stepping stone for Conor Benn, really.
I don't think it's a stepping stone. It's a definite step up. His last 2 fights, I've been mega impressed with Conor Benn. He's shown huge improvements in his game against Sebastian Formay. He came out and he did the boxing and showed he's got a real boxing ability when he wants to. And then, last time out, Sammy Vargas, again, another slight step up. He blew him away and showed his ruthlessness, and the accuracy of that knockout was brilliant. Granados, we previewed it obviously when it's supposed to be on Fight Camp 1, didn't we? He's coming in at 21, 8 losses, obviously 3 draws. That's not that impressive. But then you look at who he's been in with. I've got some names down. Robert Easter Jr., Danny Garcia, Adrian Broner, Sean Porter. All those were points losses, bar Garcia, who took him out in the 7th round. And, a lot of people said he beat Adrian Broner. He's durable. I think with Conor Benn, with his age and experience, because again, it's a limited amateur career, we've got to not get too excited too soon. And there's been the talk of the Porters. I'd love to see it, don't get me wrong, but I think it's too much too soon. We need to see, this is a nice little step up, provided he comes through this, which I think he will. I do think he'll knock him out, in fairness. And then, there's a lot of talk, Khan Brook, they might fight each other. Can he get one of them? There's fights for him. I just think it needs to be a slightly slower build, and everyone needs to just slightly calm down a touch with Conor Benn, and just enjoy what he's doing. The journey doesn't need to be rushed, does it? He's got time to decide, and so. But no, I do think he'll win.
Ben, are you agreeing as well? Do you think Conor Benn wins this? Obviously, as you say with Granados, Josh, it's he's maybe one of those fighters that just hasn't chickened out of the harder fights, and he's still been respectable in them. But at the same time, Ben, how do you see this one going? Has Conor Benn got enough to get the win, and it's just another one of them?
Well, I'm a massive Conor Benn fan, and I think he'll win this. I think he's a world-class operator. I know, like Josh is, you don't want to get too excited, but he's had 18 fights, and every fight he's improved. Like I always say, he's gone right. He had one fight which people say could have lost early in his career. He corrected it in a good second performance. And he's in his last 2 fights, he's just shown how much class and quality he has. Yeah, he can take his time, he can outbox, or he can turn it on and just overwhelm them with his power. I just think that he can do it all. I do wonder, is it his game plan he gets right, or does he go out and he's just going to show what he can do? But I think with Granados, or however you pronounce it, he's more of a gatekeeper, like we've said about some fighters before, and that is what he is. He's not afraid to get in the ring of anyone because he is a fighter, and he's gone in with the big names, and he's held his own. So I do think that this is the right. You said stepping stone at the start, Scott. I do think you can say it's a stepping stone in Conor Benn's career, but it's a good one to have. It's
the right level at the right time, almost. Yeah, I get that.
When against Vargas, you can kind of weigh up what his performance is like someone else. I know different stage of career could have been a few years ago, but you can see where they are. I think he's going in the right direction. So far, he ticks every box, and he's so good to see. And then, Joe, I love his post fights as well. So much attitude and like passion, and he'll call out and he'll say who he wants, and he will just take that fight, and he just wants to keep moving up, and he will be a world champion.
Yeah, of course. I don't disagree with anything you've said, to be fair, but I'm going to throw something about our next fight that maybe you lads will disagree with, maybe others will, but I've just got to be completely honest. Katie Taylor obviously coming up against Jennifer Han. Look, Katie Taylor wins this, don't she? Let's not, there's not really too much to even debate on this. It's great to see Katie Taylor on the card again. Can I say this is a fight that really excites me? Not really.
Yeah.
But that's not her fault. I don't know if anything I've said there is controversial, but for me, I just see a Katie Taylor win. I don't see any shock, and I think it's just going to be just a chance for Katie Taylor to showcase again why she is the face of women's boxing and has been for quite a few years.
No, go on.
No, what I was going to say is I get what you're saying, and I do think it's Katie Taylor win hands down. But it's like we've said many a time, there's no depth in the women's divisions as much. So you are going to have a lot more of these fights, and it is harder to get the big fights made because there's not loads of names at the top. So I think it's not her fault, like you say, but she's keeping active, and that's the main thing. She's not just waiting for the next big one.
I think it's important that we actually point out as well, in fairness, it's not Katie Taylor's fault. She's got to take this fight. She's the undisputed lightweight champion, and it's a mandatory. So, if you want to keep your belts, you've got to fight your mandatories. So, unfortunately,
I agree. And it's definitely good to see, a women's fight that high up on the card, isn't it? I think that's the important thing to get across here because, Katie Taylor herself, she's probably had events where she should have headlined, let's be honest, and she's been the second or even further down in the card at times. So I think that's a really important thing to be positive about for women's boxing once again.
No, definitely, and I just hope that after this now, we mentioned it briefly on our review of the Jake Paul card with Amanda Serrano. I just hope after this now we see a super fight before the end of the year. McCaskill's obviously on the announced team. We could see that. I really want the Serrano fight. I'm not going to make any secrets of it. I think outside of Joshua Fury in boxing, I think that's one of the most exciting fights that can be made. So let's see.
Does it headline its own card, Josh?
100% for me. 100%.
Could this be the biggest women's fight that we've probably seen? And I'm trying to think of like a real headliner women's card before. Like, is this one where this is the women's fight is paraded as the main fight?
Well, the best way I could describe it is obviously last year in the winter they did the all women's event, didn't they, on Sky? Yeah. With obviously the usual suspects involved, and it was a brilliant card. But that was on a Saturday night, normal fight night on Sky. For me, that could headline a pay-per-view, genuinely. I think, the fight's that big. Don't get me wrong, I think it would need the right undercard, and obviously with DAZN now, the pay-per-view platform's not such a thing. But that's how big I genuinely do feel that fight is.
I feel like it's the zone has made it easier obviously for fight, for women fighters in their own right. I mean, they fully deserve to headline these cards, but it's perhaps made it a bit easier for them to do so. And I think that can only be a positive thing. Obviously, the zone have upped the prices, haven't they? This week, maybe a couple of quid more, a couple more pounds more than people have thought, but still a pretty respectable price. Well, move on to the last fight then. Obviously, the title of this has to be all about revenge, doesn't it? Mauricio Lara coming up against Josh Warrington. For me, Warrington himself actually said in an interview, I think it was with The Guardian yesterday, I read and saw it, he was saying he was always a bit fearful of that first loss because he just doesn't know how you'd react. I think he's going to come back fighting. I think he's going to pick up the win. I mean, Lara has on the surface an impressive record until you then dive into it and you realise that he's not really fought anyone of any merit, really. Let's be completely honest. It was a complete shock, that win against Josh Warrington. Ben, start with you, mate. Do you think this is just going to be, is this just going to be a case of Josh Warrington getting his revenge and then moving on to obviously, bigger things? It was his first loss in his career. I'm sure a bit like the Joshua Ruiz belt. He just wants to rectify that now and move on, doesn't he?
He does, but I don't think you're giving Lara enough credit for what he did. I think you're acting like Warrington's going to walk over him, and he's not. You can never if you've lost once, you can lose again. The way Warrington fights, he scraps and that, and he does outpoint them. But Lara showed the power, so Warrington knows he can be put down. Like, it might have gone 9 in that first fight, but it could have easily ended in the 4th. In my opinion, the ref should have stopped it in the 4th because Warrington was out. And I do think Warrington will win. I am a big fan of his, but I just think you got to give Lara justice for what he did. And like, he put on a fantastic performance, and he beat one of the best boxers in that weight division, if not in my opinion.
Look, I am giving him his credit for his first fight, of course. I mean, obviously the TKO victory. He deserved it, didn't he? But I can't help but feel that was the complacency a bit, or was it just a fully well done to obviously Mauricio Lara? Because for me, Josh Warrington shouldn't have lost that fight. Let's be honest. Mauricio Lara's lost to opponents much less respectable than Josh Warrington. In fact, I don't really see many names on his card that are respectable. So that's why I personally just feel that Warrington's just going to, he's just going to derail him early. I think he'll just want to make a statement. Josh, what were your thoughts on this?
See, I agree. In fairness, similar to Straffon when he fought James Tennyson, what we've seen in the COVID era, these South American journeymen, you could argue, have come over and they've been doing the job on our guys. Nobody expected Lara to get the win, particularly in the fashion. Obviously, Warrington, I think, was teed up for the Jukan fight. It didn't happen. Obviously, we all know what's gone on to happen there. It was a banana skin, but Warrington fights off the crowd, doesn't he? He loves his Leeds army. They're passionate about him, and you can see he fights off the energy. What he needs to do in this fight is not trade up, and he loves to do that, which is my only worry. I do worry, you've got 20,000 Josh Warrington Leeds fans all cheering him on. Is he going to think, I'll go and have a war with him? And that's what he tried to do in the first fight, and he came off second best. I think he needs to keep the distance and use his boxing ability. And, you mentioned Joshua Ruiz. It's a similar sort of game plan. Try and box him, because I think what Lara showed was he was quite one-dimensional. He was sort of pretty much coming in on straight lines, and it was quite a sort of novice technique he was using. And I think Josh Warrington will have far too much quality. Before this, he was in conversation to have a fight with the Jukan for the Ring Magazine title to be number 1 in the division. So this fight for me is just about get the win. Don't worry about the knockout. He's not known for his knockouts anyway. Get the win and move on to bigger and better things, because it's one of those fights that if he loses, you're potentially thinking, what now? And
what would be great to see, wouldn't it, was Josh Warrington getting that win and setting up a fight with let's just say our well-known friend. Obviously, you lads know who I'm talking about here.
No, definitely.
Hazardly would have been ordered to fight someone. I can't quite the names on the tip of my tongue. He's been ordered to fight someone.
Oh, he has, to be fair, but yeah, I mean it's irrelevant if Josh Warrington doesn't
We
pop
want to
it
see
in.
that eventually, though, don't we? We want to see that, and the Battle of the East Midlands against the Battle of Yorkshire, and we'll be sitting there in the West Midlands just rubbing our hands together, watching it all happen. But yeah, obviously a really impressive card to come at the weekend. Another one on the zone. So yeah, guys. Obviously, let us know your thoughts. Is there anything you disagreed with? But more importantly, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and we'll of course be doing our usual reaction to all the everything that goes on at the weekend.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers.